I'm so glad that you have chosen to spend your Friday night with me. And we had a great turnout last week. And I got to tell you that we had a ton of questions. And so many, I don't know that we're going to be able to answer all of them tonight, but I'll do as many as I can. And then I have a feeling we might have to make this a regular event, having several Q&As a month, because boy, have the questions come out of the woodwork. So that's awesome. I'm really excited to see the number of new people that have jumped in and are out there putting deals together, sending submission forms in to do the deals. I mean, it's very, very cool. And I'm hoping that some of you have some deals that you can bring to the Academy. Last year, I was able to negotiate. We've got a little bit of feedback there, Matthew. Are we okay?
Yeah, we're good. My bad.
Okay. But last year, someone brought a note, and I was actually able to call the note seller and negotiate the deal right on the phone in front of the class. So I'm hoping that you all, some of you will bring some deals to the Academy. And of course, time is of the essence on deals. So you don't want to sit on a deal for a week just to bring it to the Academy. But if you happen to have any about that time, by all means, bring them, because that would be a lot of fun to call the note seller right in front of the class. So before we get started, I want to announce the winner of the negotiating audio class. And that is Larry Pritz. And Larry, I was so excited when I saw that you were on the call last week. I haven't talked to you in years, and you got to call me up so we can catch up. But I will be emailing you, and I'll send you the links to the negotiating CDs. Well, they're actually audio classes online, and they are really good. I think you will love them. And at the end of the call, we will give away another set, and that will be another link. Whoever's still on the call at the end, will give away. We'll announce the winner tonight. Okay, we'll do that a little differently. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. I have so many questions about where to start, and that's awesome, because if you don't get started, you're not going to close any deals. So I'm going to try to go through some of them. Mary Kay wants to know if I would discuss the quickest and best way to develop credibility for people who are new to note buying when they're talking with the note sellers. Well, the first thing that I would recommend is that you try to put up some kind of a website, because most people, before they respond to someone, they're going to check you out. They'll Google you. They will go, if you've given them a business card, which is the very, very first thing that I do. Like if you don't have a business card, you should order them tonight or over the weekend. Vistaprint usually has some good deals on them. But I would definitely print up some business cards, and I would say on the card, I pay cash for notes, or I pay cash for mortgages, or I buy mortgages and deeds of trust, however you want to put it, but you need to let people know what you do. So then on that business card, you would have your website. And it doesn't have to be some real sophisticated, detailed site. You just have to have something that looks professional. A few pages to say who you are and what you do. And I think that immediately helps to establish some credibility. And then as you're able to, I would definitely add some pages, maybe some informational pages. Like if you go to my site, thenotebuyer.com, I've got some really good Q&As. Actually, you can click on sell my note. And I have an online ordering so that if you want to get a quote, you can enter the information, and it automatically sends the information to my email, and then I can respond. And then there's also a Q&A so that if a note seller has some questions about the process, if you add that kind of information, that will also give you a lot of credibility. So those are the two biggest things. Now, if you happen to be working the deal with me, if you are on one of my coaching programs, honestly, that's the easiest way to establish credibility. In fact, just today at noon, maybe it was yesterday. I've lost track of time. Been busy. I had 2 huge closings this week, but it was either yesterday or today. And a brand new student, and she had a guy that had multiple seller carryback notes, and they were all performing. And I want to say he had like a half a dozen of them or so. And she had never really talked to any note seller. So we just arranged a conference call. And I did all the talking. She introduced us, and I talked to the fella. And as soon as he found out that I was her partner and I've been in business for 30 years, my credibility translates over to her. Okay. And he asked, how are we going to do this? Am I going to call you, or should I call her? And I said, oh, by all means, you call her, because, we're not going to cut anybody out. And she's your contact. And if she can't answer the question, then she will get a hold of me. One of us will call you back, or both of us. And so that, I think, is going to be a really good lead for her, because I'm going to review the notes over the weekend, and then we're going to give him a call back on Monday or Tuesday. So by all means, if I can help you to establish credibility, I will. Now, obviously, I can't get on every phone call with everyone, but to the extent that you need me and I'm available, I am happy to do that. Another thing that I want to mention is never be afraid of saying, I don't know the answer. I remember, it was a long time ago, but I do remember people asking me questions that I hadn't run across that before. And what I discovered was that they would much rather have you say, I'm not quite sure of that, but my associate has been in the business for 30 years, and I'm sure she has come across that. Let me get in touch with her, and I will call you back with the answer, because I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. They will have more respect for you if you tell them that than if you were just to try to guess and just come up with some kind of an answer. Also, keep in mind, you're the one with the cash. I mean, it might not be your cash. It could be mine. It could be an investor's. But the fact of the matter is, you're the one that they need. They need you more than you need them. Okay. And so that helps you to have some confidence that it's okay to say, I don't know that, but I will get back to you with the answer. And then make sure that you get back to them with an answer. So Mary Kay, I hope that helps. I honestly think the business card and the website is definitely a really good way to get started. And then if you need to, bring me in. Also, I didn't mention having a LinkedIn profile. I think that is, to me, that's probably one of the best ways to develop contacts. It can give you instant credibility. Go through some of the other people's sites and see what they've put on their profile. And you want to say something like that you're in the note business, that you buy all types of notes, both performing and non-performing, that you buy a lot of privately held notes, the seller carryback notes. And you just want to establish yourself, give a background. One fella asked me, how do I respond if they say, well, are you going to buy the note yourself, or are you just going to broker the note to somebody else? And the thing is, they don't want to talk to you usually, or not usually, but a lot of times they don't want to talk to you if they know you're brokering the note, because they figure that you're just going to cut out a piece for you, and they'd rather talk to an end buyer because they think that they will get a better quote, which, by the way, is not always true. Okay. It just so happens that I have some buyers that I can get better prices for than a lot of the institutional buyers. And so if they're just going to turn around and call up an institutional buyer, hey, they'd be better off to buy from us if we're partnering on the deal, even if we're going to take a piece, for a spread for profit for ourselves. We may very well still wind up giving them a better quote than what they would find from an institution. But if somebody says, are you the end buyer, or are you just brokering? Here is your response. You want to say to them, I buy for my own account. if it's a note that I like and it meets my particular criteria. On the other hand, I get lots of notes from all over the country that might not be exactly for me, but on the other hand, they're very good notes, and I have investors all over the country. And so if it's a good note, I can still place it. Also, sometimes my money is all out, and so I'm not able to buy it myself right at that point, and I don't want to hold you up. So in that case, I'm going to sell it to somebody else. But know that I have very good investors, and I will absolutely get you a top dollar price for it. And so that way you're not lying, because if you had the money, wouldn't you buy the note? And if that's true, then what you just said is a fact. And if you're working with me on the coaching, you have access to investors all over the country. Now, what I want you to do is build up your own investor list. And in fact, somebody asked that. Fred wanted to know, he says, once you find somebody ready to sell, where do you find someone ready to buy? And do you use the same list to find a buyer? Do you build a buyer's list and a seller's list? And how long are sellers willing to wait for the property to be sold? All really good questions, Fred. Okay, so here is the thing. If you're working with me on a coaching program, you don't have to worry about that, because we're going to use my investors. And that is one of the advantages of working with me on the coaching. But ideally, you want to start building up your investor base. I will tell you, first of all, you do not advertise for investors. And I know that there are a lot of gurus out there that will do that, but I am telling you, you're making a big mistake. I would not do it unless you have personally talked to an attorney about your particular situation, and that attorney has given you his professional opinion on what you can do and not do. The thing is that they may be advertising for a fund, and if they have met all the requirements of the SEC, then in that case, they could advertise. But I will tell you the reason why I am so firm about not wanting you to advertise. Many years ago, and they're much stricter today than they were back then, in my academy, a fella raised his hands. Now, you can tell how long ago it was because this was in the yellow pages. But nonetheless, he had put an ad in the yellow pages that said something to the effect of 14% returns secured by real estate. That's all he said, something like that. And he got a call from an SEC. What do you call the people that, like, they're almost trying to trick you? Kind of entrapment. They pretend to be an investor. And this guy called him up. And thankfully, my student had just put it in. I mean, he'd only just started within the last, couple of weeks before then. And so he had not done any deals. And so he basically got a slap on the wrist and slap on the hand, said, hey, don't do that anymore. But you can't advertise rates of return. Now, if you are careful, in most states, you can advertise notes for sale. Now, mind you, you need to have that note under contract, or you have to own it. You can't just see a note online and you don't even have it under contract and say, hey, this note is for sale. If you don't have an option on it, or have a note purchase agreement signed on it, or in some way have that own part of it and have the authority to sell that note, then you can't put that on your website for sale, okay? But assuming that you have it under contract, you can say, I have a note for sale. I send emails out. If you've joined my list, if you have gone to my website and joined my list, I normally offer them to students first and then to people on my list. And I will say, I've got notes in Texas, California, Florida, Ohio. And sometimes I give a little description, and I will tell people, if you're interested. Now, the way that I like to do it is I invite them to fill out an investor profile form. Okay. And this tells me what they're interested in, what geographical location, what size of a note, do they want performing, non-performing? And then what I do is I try to pair up the notes that I have with an investor where that note meets their criteria. Okay. So that's how I handle it. But when I send out that email, I will get investors that email back saying, hey, I want to know the details on the Ohio notes, or I want to know your details on Texas, or hey, I just have $100,000 in my IRA. If you get anything for $100,000 in the North Carolina area, make sure you let me know. Okay. And so do you see what happened? I did not advertise for investors, but by saying I have these notes for sale, which I legitimately had for sale, then other people responded saying, hey, if you get any here, let me know. And actually, when I got started at the Cincinnati REIA Group some 30 years ago, that's how I got my investors as well. Only I would stand up and say, I have a note for sale. When you do the buy, show, tell, or whatever it is, show and tell, or buy and sell, I would stand up and say, I have a note available. And I would give the details and say, if anybody's interested in purchasing this note, then give me a call. And so what would happen is the investors in the room would come up to me and give me their card. And they'd say, hey, what do you do with these notes? If you ever want to sell any of them, give me a call. Here's my card. And people think you need to have this huge investor database. You don't need a huge database. I started out, I had 4 or 5 investors that back then maybe had $100,000 in their self-directed IRA. That's all I had. And I used them for years because I teach them how to get an early payoff so that it increases their rate of return. And then they've got money back that they want to reinvest. I mean, they're happy because they got this great rate of return. And they'll call up and say, hey, Donna, I've got $75,000. So-and-so just paid off. Do you have another note? And so you reuse the investors over and over again. So please don't feel like you need to have this huge database or this long list of buyers. Now, what you want to do is, as you're out telling people, like every opportunity that you have, if you're sitting at your son's or daughter's soccer game or basketball game, or, wherever you have the opportunity to, you want to let people know that you buy and sell notes. Okay. You just make a statement. That's what I do. I buy and sell notes. And so if someone says, hey, what do you mean? I heard you can invest in notes. How does that work? Then you can tell them, well, if you have a self-directed IRA, and I can give you the names of some, if you have a self-directed IRA, you could transfer your IRA funds. Perhaps you might have it with a stock fund or something like that, transfer it to the self-directed IRA holder, and then you could invest in these privately held notes that I have available. And I'd be happy to send you an executive summary telling you what I've got, and you can see if you're interested. And so that is one way of doing it. Now, I do need to add this caveat. I would not sell to new investors, and I wouldn't use new investors for your first few deals. I don't like that because you need to be able to look out for them. Same with using family members. Unless you have done several deals yourself and you know the ins and outs, and you can absolutely identify a good note versus maybe one that's a little shaky, you want to make sure of what you're giving to people, okay? And so that because they're going to place their trust in you. So what I honestly would do is, if you're new to investing, either use me in the coaching program. And as you know, that if you send me a deal and we're on the coaching program, I walk you through the whole thing and we split the profits 50-50 using my investors. Do you have to split profits with me? No, there is another way to do it. You could simply call institutional buyers. Now, they're not going to walk you through it. They're not going to hold you by the hand and explain everything. Their quotes are short and to the point. You're not going to get an email saying, this is the good thing about this, and this is the bad thing, and here's how we calculated the buy rate. They don't do that. But nonetheless, if it's a good deal, you send them the submission form. They will give you a quote, and then they will buy it. And then you can build in the, buy low, sell high, and whatever your spread is, that's your profit. And then you don't have to split it with anybody. And so before I would consider selling your notes to a private investor, I would do, I don't know, 3 or 4 with an institution or with someone like me. And so that you learn the process and then start developing your quote buyers list. And I highly recommend that you use real estate investors. Real estate investors from your local real estate association, they are the best ones because they already are familiar with real estate. And they're probably really tired of the proverbial tenants, trash, and toilets. Okay? And so many real estate investors, after they've been around for a while and they're fed up with all the headaches of dealing with the property, those are the people that move into notes. And so what will happen, and it's happened to me many times, you'll find someone, my first investor, he had 30 some properties and he was worn out. He was tired of dealing with them. And so one by one, he sold off those properties. And every time that he sold a property, he would call me up. I've got $40,000. Do you have a note? And he, one by one, converted all of those properties into notes. And so do you see why you don't need a big, long line of buyers? The buyers are easy to come by if you get out into the marketplace and let people know what you're doing. Okay. How long are sellers willing to wait for the property to be sold? Well, I think you meant for the note to be purchased, or for you to find a good note, maybe is what you meant. I think it depends on the buyer. And I mean, it depends on how many people you have in the wings and how many notes you have available. So what I do is I don't advertise for buyers until I know I've got notes available. Normally I have an idea, and there are many people, like I have some investors that I've done a dozen deals with. And so rather than, it just depends on where you're at. I probably shouldn't say that. You do need to try to match up your deal flow with your investor flow. That would be a good way to say it. Okay, Joseph wants to know, do I have a checklist? Yes, I do. Oh my gosh, I have a deal checklist. And I didn't have one of my manuals up here to look it up real quick, but I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is in the due diligence chapter. It's towards the beginning, after getting started would be doing your marketing, and it should be right behind that. It might be like chapter 8, maybe, but there is most definitely a deal checklist that will walk you through the entire deal. I could not live without my deal checklist. I would be lying in bed at night saying, did I do that? Did I do that? Did I order this? Uh-oh, I forgot to call the title company. And I like to go to sleep when I get in bed, not lay there and worry about what I've done or haven't done. So definitely check the checklist, and you'll be real happy you did. Yvette would like to know, is this course for people who have no knowledge about flipping notes and who have no knowledge about real estate? Well, yes, it is. And it's also for experienced investors as well. I love to teach. I love to take what some people think is a very complicated topic, and I like to break it down step by step so that it's easy to understand. Maybe that's because I raised 4 boys and I helped them with their homework. Maybe it's because I remember how hard it was for me to learn. I was very fortunate to have an attorney who taught me the business. And quite frankly, if he had not been available, I don't know that I would be here today. And so I realized that most of the materials out there are people, so-called gurus, who are just spouting out deals that they've done. Hey, look, you can make $40,000 here, and here's my check. I made $75,000 on this deal. And they tell you all the things they've done, but they don't tell you how you can do them. That's a big difference. And I think if you were to get my course, you should know that there is a guarantee with it. And I promise you that you will be so thrilled with it. Everybody says that and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but people say that there is nothing else that is as comprehensive and as step-by-step as my master guide. And in fact, many of the big promoters, they say, if you're starting out, start with Donna's, because it will give you the best foundation. And then if you want to go into other niches, that's great. I mean, I took everybody's course I could. When I got started, man, if there was something in town or if I could get there, I took it. Because even when I was doing lots of deals and I could have stood up and taught the class, I would still go, because there's a synergy that is created when you are in a room with other like-minded people. And I used to take my assistants to these seminars, and while they're sitting there sucking up all this brand new information, just being in that atmosphere, I'd think of some really cool strategy, and come up with new ideas and stuff. So even though my course is it is especially nice for beginners, I will tell you this past week I was at CORE, the Columbus Real Estate Investors, and I had the pleasure of having Bill Cook, who is a very, very experienced real estate investor and note investor. And he was in the class with me. I was giving a talk to their subgroup, and he was thrilled. Somebody of his caliber to enjoy my talk, I mean, it made my day, let me tell you. And so the thing is that because of my experience, I do a lot of things that other people don't do. I use options with notes. I do partials, which I love partials. I can teach you how to recoup your monies, and like if you have all your monies invested in non-performing notes, how you can recapitalize by selling a partial on them. And so I do lots of really cool things that advanced investors love as well. So I am very proud to say that whether you are a beginner or whether you are a very experienced investor, I know I've got things for you that you will absolutely love. Okay. Chris wants to know, what are the list providers that you recommend? What type of list do you ask for? And do they have lists of seller finance notes only? And then also, for someone just starting out, should I use postcards or letters? Okay. If you are one of my students, you should have received a welcome email. And in that welcome email, I gave you several names of list providers that if you tell them you're my student, they will give you a discount. Okay. Obviously, I can't put that on the air. They'd be furious because everybody would be getting a discount. Okay. But if you are a student, please refer back to that email, because I have several good list providers that you can get a discount on the names. But if you Google seller finance list, note buying list, technically it's the mortgagee index, but I don't think anybody calls it that. More likely that you would find seller carryback list or something along those lines. Nowadays, there are so many list providers out there that it's easy to find people where you can buy the list from. And that's the type of list you ask for. You want privately held notes. They can be mortgages, deeds of trust, or land contracts. Some places call them contract for deeds, okay? But the important thing is that they are seller carrybacks. Ideally, your niche are the mom and pops who have carried back notes, where ideally they lived in the property and they carried back a note, or real estate investors who had rental properties. I have a huge part of my note buying that I do are real estate investors who owned the rental property, collected rents for many, many years. They sold the property and they carried back a mortgage when they sold the property. And what's really cool about them is they have made boatloads of money. I mean, they might have owned that property for 40 years. And so they collected on the rents, they collected on the mortgage, and they've already made their money. And at this point, they're looking to liquidate things. They're downsizing. They're tying up loose ends because they don't want their heirs to have to deal with it. And so what happens is you get the best deals from them. And so I highly recommend that you try to find individuals, investors who sold rental properties and carried back notes when they sold their rental properties. Oftentimes they sell them to the people who are renting. Okay. To me, that would be my choice note to buy because I buy a lot of them. And because I always, I make a lot of money on them. And I want to say something else. I also give the note seller a very good price for them. And that's one of the benefits of doing the notes, that you really can create a win-win on the deal. Okay. Should you use postcards or letters? Now, at the Academy, we're going to go through this in detail. Okay. Personally, I always used the letters. I like letters better because I tend to be very professional. That's just my image, and that's what's natural to me. And when I sent out my letters, I got a 6% response rate and a 1% close rate. The letter that I use is in the master guide. There are several different ones. However, many of my students have been using postcards, and they use them very successfully. The important thing is that you recognize that these are two completely different strategies. Don't mix them up, because if you mix them up, you're not going to get any response. For example, I had this fella who he sent out 2,500 postcards, and he did not get one response. And he called me up. He said, look, what's going on? I've sent out 2,500 postcards. This does not work. And I said, look, send me a copy of what you sent out. He did not follow my postcard strategy at all. He took the letter and took everything that was on the letter and instead created this 4-color, beautiful postcard, one of the prettiest postcards I've ever seen. But on it, it says, I pay cash for mortgages. Call me. I'll tell you how much cash I'll give you. And so what happens is a homeowner or a note holder that receives that, they look at it. If they don't have a note that they want to sell right now, it goes in the trash. You're much better off to have sent them a letter that they open up, they read, and it's professional looking. And it tells them, hey, if you don't need cash now, put this in your mortgage file, because instead of going out and borrowing money, I'll buy your note from you. Or call for a free quote, and I'll give you a free amortization schedule. Okay. So that's why I like the letters. However, the students who have been really successful with the postcards, and many of them have, it's a different strategy. And the idea is to send them a postcard just to pique their interest. You don't tell them what you're writing to them about. You use a plain manila type postcard. You can buy them pre-stamped at the post office, and use a handwritten, a font that looks like it's handwritten. And there are some very authentic looking ones nowadays that really do look like handwriting. And you say, Dear Steve, please call me about the mortgage you hold on 51 Andover Road. Sincerely, Donna Dealer, cell phone number, right? Cell and your number. And that's all you say. Now think about it. If you got that postcard, wouldn't you call? I mean, if I got that postcard, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what happened? Did the people skip out? Did the property burn down? Are they tearing up the place? Man, something's going on. This guy wrote me a personal postcard. I need to call him and find out what's happening. And so then he calls you up and you say, you know, I noticed in public record that you're holding a mortgage on this property. And I am an investor and I buy mortgages. And I was wondering if you might be interested in cashing out of your mortgage. Have you ever thought about that? And if you'd like, if you have just a few minutes, I can get some basic information from you. And I could call you back and tell you exactly what I can pay for your mortgage. Wouldn't that be a good thing to know? I mean, maybe you're not ready to cash out of it now, but wouldn't it be nice to know about what it's worth so that if 6 months from now, you know about what somebody would pay for it. And so what it does, it gives you the opportunity to develop a rapport with the note seller. And I can't tell you how many times investors have, or note sellers, my students have told me that note sellers have called them back. In fact, just this past week, I had an investor here in Cincinnati who called me and they saved, I'm not sure if it was a postcard or a letter, but they saved it from like 7 or 8 years ago. I mean, that's a long time to call back on. So never give up. You never know if people might not respond in 30 days. But I mean, this guy really called her from many years ago. It was 7 or 8 years ago. Okay, so we will at the Academy, and if you haven't, if you're not aware of the Academy, you definitely need to go to my website, to thenotebuyer.com, and go to the website and check out the information on the Academy. It's coming up September 27th through the 30th. It's going to be at the Radisson Hotel again, and they have redone the hotel. They have a completely new staff. It's totally awesome. And they have promised to take really good care of us. They have phenomenal food, and I supply all the food for 4 days. And I'm not talking about box lunches. I'm talking about really nice breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And on Saturday night, we go on a cruise. I have rented the B&B riverboats. I've rented a boat, one of the old-fashioned type paddle boats. It's a replica of one. And we go on a dinner cruise up the river for about an hour and a half, and then we turn around and come back down. And they have really good food, a nice, I think it was prime rib and salmon or something like that. But it was wonderful. And so it's a lot of fun. You'll meet lots of people. The networking is fabulous, especially because everybody doesn't go in a different direction when it's time to eat. We go up to the 16th floor of the Radisson, and that's overlooking Cincinnati and Covington. And so it's a great atmosphere, and we have this wonderful food, and you can sit and talk to everybody. You can either sit with the same folks all the time. I think it's good to move around so you get to meet everybody. And so people make really lifelong friends from coming to the Academy. And like I mentioned, the synergy, and not to mention my great teaching, you know. And so if you can make it, it's definitely an annual event that you don't want to miss. So go to the website and check that out. But what I started to tell you was that what we will do, I'm going to add some things this year that we haven't done in the past. And I'm going to work in round tables. So you'll be like in a group of 4 or 5 people. And I'm going to give you real deals for you to evaluate. Okay, I'm saving up my submission forms. So they will not be live deals, but they will be real, okay? And I'm going to have you work together to evaluate the notes and to prepare a quote and to call and do a role play with the note seller. So this is going to be really a hands-on learning experience. And you don't have to be afraid, because you can work in a group. And if you don't like to be on the phone, then get somebody else to be the person on the phone. You know, maybe you're good at the numbers, or maybe you're good at evaluating, you know. And so it's really going to be a great event. And I will tell you that when you go to those, and for 4 days, you've basically been eating, drinking, and sleeping notes. I mean, that's all you do for 4 days. When you come out of there, even if you have never bought a note before, you will feel like a pro. because you will have it will become ingrained in you. Okay, so hopefully if you can make it, you should clear your schedule and come. We've got the early bird special going on. It's $15.97 for one person. Bring your spouse or business partner or significant other for only $600, and basically that's just to cover the food. So it's a great time, and I'm answering questions now because I want you to get started right away. But know that at the Academy, I can go much more in depth. Plus, like I said, we're going to do the role playing and those other things. Okay. Okay, on to questions. Kathy wants to know, what do you think about contacting realtors that have clients that will do seller finance? I think that's a great idea. I would not do that if you are brand new. And I would, this is one of those things where you get 3 or 4 deals under your belt. And the reason is the realtor is going to look to you for advice on how to structure the deal. So if you don't know what constitutes a good note, you need to go to my Smart Seller Financing book, which that entire book is written to help you to create a seller finance note where when you go to sell it, you'll get top dollar for it. And Zaya, that would be a good course for you to look at first. I know you've got the whole set, but you were asking about creating notes. That's where I would start, okay, is with that green Smart Seller Financing book. But you need to be able to help them to create notes. Just to throw out just a few quick examples. A note is worth more if it has a balloon on it. Now, if they're creating notes, you have to be careful not to violate Dodd-Frank. If it is a true seller carryback, okay, where this is the only note that this note seller has created and sold, that's the only time when you can have a balloon on it, okay? And that's awesome because that means if you put a 5-year balloon on it, then when you go to sell it, you'll get top dollar for it. Whereas if you've done multiple deals, you can't have a balloon. And so that means it needs to be fully amortized. Well, when you go to sell a fully amortized note, you're not going to get as much money for it. So then you'll have some people say, well, hey, if the sooner you get your money back, the more valuable the note is, then I'm going to put a 2-year balloon on it. Well, don't go and do that, because then people are wondering, hey, if this is going to pay off in a year or 2 years, why are you trying to sell it? You must think that it's not going to pay off. I don't want to buy this. You know, so it scares them away. So I like to put a 5 to 7 year balloon on the note. And a similar thing with interest rate. The higher the interest rate to a degree, okay, the less of a discount you have to take. But if you think, oh, I'm going to put a 12%, 14% rate on it, hey, now people are going to wonder, why were they willing to pay 12% on this note? Man, they must have really bad credit, or they couldn't go get a bank loan. Whereas if you put 7 or 8%, that's a very reasonable amount, and it still will help so that you don't have to take as much of a discount as if you had a 3 or 4% rate. There's lots of little caveats like that. And like I said, we will cover those in detail at the Academy, or you can go to the Smart Seller Financing, the green manual, and look that up as well. Okay. And then I believe this is Zaya's question. Talking about, can your IRA borrow money to buy a property, and that it has to be a non-recourse loan. Now, we just switched gears. He's asking about buying a property, not a note. You can borrow money. You can borrow money to buy a note or a property. But if you're doing that, if you want your IRA to borrow the money, he is correct. It does have to be a non-recourse loan. What does that mean? That means, like, if your IRA is borrowing the money, the lender cannot foreclose on your IRA. That would put your IRA in jeopardy. That is a prohibited transaction. So if somebody is lending your IRA money to buy a property, their only recourse is to take the property, not to come after your IRA. Okay. And we will be talking about that more. Actually, Carl Fisher with Camaplan. And if you did not see our blog post this week, it's a great interview that I had with Carl Fisher. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him, I don't even know how long. And I know him because he was a note buyer before he even started Camaplan. And I just closed 2 deals with him. My student, my investor, has their IRA with Camaplan. It was awesome. It was so easy, no issues whatsoever. Wrapped the deal up in no time at all. And he is going to be at the Academy, and he will be speaking and sharing some of the really cool things that you can do in your IRA. And he definitely would be the one to ask these kind of questions of. Now, somebody else also asked, because last year I had Jim Hitt, who has American IRA, and he was at the Academy. He's another awesome guy to work with. Very easy, has great prices. So I recommend him as well. And then there is another company that I really like, and that is Midland Trust. And they have offices in Florida and Chicago. Those are 3 of my favorites to work with because I find that they're easy to do and their pricing is very fair. Okay, but Carl Fisher will be at the Academy, and he will be available to answer questions, and he'll be sharing a lot more information than he gave on the interview that I did on the blog. Okay. Oh, this might be Dan's question. I think it's Dan's. He was asking about the numbers for the Sam and Bill example that I give all the time. And rather than answer them tonight, because we had so many questions, I'm going to do a little separate video for that and explain how I got those numbers. But I will tell you this, what some people miss on that, because when I'm giving that, I'm trying to keep it very simple so you don't get caught up in all the details. I'm more concerned about you learning the process of buy low, sell high, and make money. But what some people miss on that is that there is a 10-year balloon. So if you go back and you watch last week's webinar and watch the Sam and Bill example, you will see that Bill says to Sam, I'll pay you 10% interest. I'll pay you $4,000 a month. I'll give you $150,000 down. And in 10 years, I will refinance and pay you whatever I owe you. That's where I'm calling for that 10-year balloon. And so I think if you make that a 10-year term with a balloon, I think your numbers will turn out right. But I will go over that, and I'm going to put that in the Learning Center. Okay, so be on the watch for that. Okay. And somebody asked if on the Miss Annie deal, which I give to show phenomenal rates of return, and that was where I sold the note to Ivan for I bought it from Miss Annie. Rick and I bought this note together. Rick is one of my students. We bought the note from Miss Annie for $80,000 some odd dollars, which was about a 25% return. And we sold it to Ivan Investor for $95,000, which gave him a 17% rate of return. Now, the current balance that was owing at that time was $117,000, or just over that. Okay. And the question was that a non-performing note? How did we get such high rates of return? That was not non-performing. That was one of those types of notes that I was just telling you about, my favorite type, where Miss Annie had multiple rental properties. She was a full-time real estate investor before it was popular for women to be real estate investors. And so she had all these rentals. As she got a little older, she sold all of the properties to the renters, carried back a note, and now she had approached Rick about selling that note. And Rick lives in Detroit. She lived in Dallas, and I live in Cincinnati. And we were able to put that deal together. And she was the one who told us, she said, I want $80,000. If you can give me $80,000 for this note, I'll sell it to you. And so that's how we came up with the number. And she was very, very happy with it. Well, we could have actually sold that note for $100,000 or more, but Ivan Investor was ready to close right away, and she was in a hurry. So rather than get greedy with it, we sold it. Rick and I made about $14,000 net profit. I think it was 14.5 gross. And so we bought it at a 25% yield. We sold it to Ivan at a 17% yield. So if he had sat back and collected the money with no early payoff, he would have made 17% on his money. But he helped them to refinance. That's his livelihood. He helped them to clean up their credit. He helped them get a mortgage broker that helped put them in a nice solid mortgage, saved them some money. And so 3 months later, he got a $117,000 payoff on his $95,000 investment, which gave him something like a 95% rate of return. I think that's correct. But no, that was not a non-performing note, which, by the way, goes to show that you can get super, super high rates of return on seller carryback notes. I don't know how many of you heard, I was on Avina's radio show this past week, and I was debating Scott Carson, and you know his big thing is the non-performing notes. And so he took non-performing and I took the seller carrybacks because I love seller carrybacks. And we had a debate, and it was awesome. And in fact, I've got a link to it. And next week, I'm going to send you the link. So we're going to have that on the blog. And then I'm going to, for my Q&A, I want to really go in depth on the non-performing notes. So for those of you who have been writing questions about the non-performing notes, I purposely am saving those because my next webinar will be completely about non-performing notes. So before we have that, be sure and listen to the debate that I had with Scott Carson, and then we'll discuss it in detail at the next webinar. And I have to tell you, let's see. I'm sorry?
Scott has a question. He asks, should he have a separate LLC for note buying?
Should you have, I didn't even see that on the chat. I'm sorry. Thank you for that, Matthew. Should you have a separate LLC for note buying? I just hold that thought for 1 second because I just want to finish what I was talking about before. So our next webinar is not going to be next Friday night because Matthew, who I could not do this without, he's not available then. So I believe we're going to have it the following Tuesday, which, Matthew, that is what day? Is that the 30th?
I think that's the 31st, yeah.
31st. Okay. And we'll send you out an email, but I'm just trying to give you a heads up not to look for us next Friday night. But on the 31st, that's when we're going to have a webinar about the non-performing notes. So if you have questions specifically on non-performing notes, get those into me before like July 30th, and I'll try to work those into the webinar for the 31st. Okay. So do you need a separate LLC for note buying? Yes and no. And what do I mean by that? First of all, if you're going to be holding the notes, you ought to be holding them in your self-directed IRA. And if you're doing that, you don't need a separate LLC. I know that there are some people who teach how to do the checkbook IRA. I'm just going to relay to you what my attorney told me. And he said that it was very dangerous to do, that it was a gray area, and that he would not risk having his IRA set aside and assets distributed out of them. Other people will say, well, he just doesn't know what he's doing. Let me tell you, that attorney has been my attorney for over 20 years. He is one of the best in the industry. He actually specialized in IRA transactions. He does know what he's talking about. And for that reason, I would not get a checkbook IRA. And I would not have an LLC specifically inside my IRA in order to purchase notes. Now, I might have an LLC for something else inside my IRA, but I would not just create an LLC. If you're using your IRA funds to buy notes, you don't need an LLC, okay? Not to hold the notes. However, I think as a general course of doing business, if you are holding yourself out to do business with the public for anything, I recommend that you have an LLC. Now, my advice would be, why don't you wait till you close a deal? I don't think you need to jump the gun and do it, you know, I can't even market for notes. I don't have an LLC. Go ahead and do your marketing, okay? I would register a DBA, doing business as. It's not that expensive. You go to your Secretary of State's website and just register a name, a company name. In most states, you do not want to market in your personal name. There is one exception, and that is Florida. Florida does not like or want you to market in a DBA or in a company name. If you are marketing if you are sending out direct mail letters, you need to have the return address should be your personal name, okay? I would not use your home address, okay? I never, ever would put my home address on any direct mail that I do because you don't know who's receiving those letters. So my game plan would be, if you have the money to start an LLC before you start your marketing, yeah, I would do that. But if you were trying to get up and running on a shoestring budget, I would close a couple deals first, and then I'd start the LLC. And if you are holding the notes for yourself, the first thing I would do is get your self-directed IRA set up so that you can do the deals within the IRA, and then you don't need an LLC. So hopefully that has answered your question. How are we on time? Oh boy, we're almost at 8 o'clock already. We definitely need to have more Q&As. Let me see if, well, there was a question here that I recall. And I apologize that I'm not able to answer all of these questions, but I will at some point. It just won't necessarily be tonight. Okay, this is about, says that I talk about how I buy notes all over the country, and often that we close in escrow, and I never go to the title company. How does that work? And what's the difference between an escrow account and a title company? Okay, what you need to understand is that different states have different ways of closing their deals. In some states, such as New Jersey, you have to close with an attorney. You cannot just go to a title company and close your deal. You must use an attorney. Now, typically, the attorney also is affiliated with the title company, whether that attorney owns it or whether they have like an affiliate business arrangement, but they have a title company that they are tied into. And so you're going to get the best of both worlds. You get the attorney and his legal advice, but you also get a reputable, experienced title company that will write the title insurance and check the title and everything like that. So some states will require an attorney. In California, they require an escrow company. The difference is, like when I had my title company, like I noticed that many companies were named title and escrow. The title company is responsible for checking the title and issuing title insurance. An escrow company is the company that handles the transaction. And an escrow is used for a closing. They're considered to be an independent third party that basically is going to look out for both parties. And so they'll make sure that all of the seller's documents come in. They'll check the title, do all that. They make sure that the buyer's money is there. And once they go through their checklist and make sure that everything pertaining to that deal is complete on both sides of the table, then they will go ahead and close. And at that point, they will record the assignment and the other documents, and then they will disperse the funds. And so that is the escrow part of the transaction. Now, if I was buying a note in Cincinnati, I certainly could go to the title company. And I do sometimes. It kind of depends on the transaction. But it's not necessary, because when you talk about doing things in escrow, what happens is, I would say like 9 out of 10 of my deals, what's going to happen is I'm going to wire money in. I'm going to email my documents. The note seller is the one who needs to come into the title company or the escrow company, because they need to bring the original note. That is a critical piece of the deal. I have to have the original note. I want to see their driver's license or picture ID. And so sometimes they will overnight that, but most of the time they want to come in to the title company and deliver it and pick up a check or know that their funds are going to be wired. So you might think, well, then how do you buy notes all over the country? Well, here's the thing. Typically, we're going to close with a title company. If there's already title insurance, you're going to go back to that same title company and probably close with them. And most of the time, that title company is going to be located in the county where the property is located. Yes, nowadays it's becoming more and more popular where you've got title companies that are nationwide, but still they're going to have an agent, or it could be one of their offices in all the major cities all around the country. So typically, when you go to close a note purchase, you're normally going to close very close to where the property is located, which is usually where the note seller is also located. Okay. And so the note seller, it's no big deal for them to take the original note in, sign all the rest of the documents, and they, like I said, collect their check. Or nowadays, usually the title company wires the funds. I kind of think that might be a federal law now, because I've noticed that if the funds are over $10,000, rather than give them an escrow check, they wire the funds. So I kind of think that might be a new law. Haven't confirmed that, but that's my thought on that. So that's how the process works. And that's why I can buy notes all over the country and I have them close the deals. And so depending on where what state it's in, it might be closing at an attorney's office, at a title company, or an escrow company. But the first step is to find out if there is existing title insurance, and I would call up that title company and start there. If you don't like that title company, then you simply call a different title company and order a new title policy. It's that simple. Okay. Okay, so Matthew, I think that you have probably, is this a message for me?
Yeah. For tonight's giveaway, since he asked the note buyer's first question on a live stream.
And he's winning the negotiating course?
Yes.
And that is Scott who?
For tonight's giveaway. Scott Strickland.
Strickland?
Yes.
Okay, we have a winner for the negotiating the audio classes, and that is Scott Strickland. Thank you for that. Okay, thanks, Matthew. I appreciate your jumping in there. And we're going to continue to give away the negotiating course at each webinar that we have. And I'm getting such a great response. I think I'm kind of going to do this on a regular basis. So I hope you're enjoying them. Do continue to send in questions. Please understand that I can't answer all these questions individually. I mean, I'm slammed closing deals and all that kind of stuff. But what I do, this works out great because I can put them all together and just take out an hour at one time and answer them all. So hopefully you have found this to be helpful. And again, if you haven't been to the website yet, go to thenotebuyer.com. Check out the information on the Academy. If you haven't signed up, I hope you will clear your schedule and come, because it is an awesome time. I think that's everything. Thanks again for joining us, and watch your emails, and we'll give you the date of the next webinar, which, like I said, is going to be on defaulted notes. So thank you, everybody. Have an awesome weekend. God bless.